This summer, Momentum members will be voting to elect a new national coordinating group, the NCG. Now, the NCG is responsible for the overall kind of direction of Momentum. And this year, there are two slates in the running for the election. We have Your Momentum and Momentum Organisers. Now, this evening, I'm going to be joined by one of the candidates who's standing on the Your Momentum slate, who I'll introduce in a moment or two. But before I get there, I have one thing I want you to do, which is to scroll down right now and hit that subscribe button. The reason you should hit that subscribe button is because firstly, it doesn't cost you a single penny. And secondly, it means that you won't miss out on any of the videos that we'll be putting out in the coming days, weeks, and months. So without further ado, I'll introduce my guest for this evening, who's Lorcan Whitehead. So Lorcan, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. A little tired from a day's work, but doing all right. So we'll crack straight on. And my first question for you is, there'll be some people who'll be watching this who aren't members of Momentum. They may be members of the Labour Party, they may be in other political groups, and they, if they are aware of this election, they might be thinking, well, what really matters here? Why does this election matter to sort of wider politics or the wider left? It appears to be, two factions within a faction within a political party. Why is this relevant? Why does this matter?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I think Momentum is probably the most important overtly socialist organisation in the UK. It's 20,000 members, resources, staff, social media reach. It's a potentially really valuable asset for the British left. And so I think that what happens with the future of Momentum is really important. And, people on the left in the UK should care about that. We've obviously had a period where we had a socialist leader of the Labour Party and that brought lots of people into activity, united people across the left of British politics. And now we're in a period where we've lost that kind of pole of attraction. And I think, it's important that Momentum is successful and big and visible and, putting across, socialist ideas in a convincing and compelling way in order to try to keep those people cohered and keep some of that activity going because, that I think is important for what happens in the next few years.
So we're going to touch on a lot of the kind of topics that you've mentioned there, but before we kind of delve into some of those bits and pieces, I wondered if you could spell out to people what you think the kind of key differences are in the approaches that the two slates running in this election are taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there were, maybe I'll just kind of preface this by saying, I think even for those of us kind of involved in the campaign, I think the differences can be a little bit kind of difficult to discern sometimes. On our side, I think we've set out a really clear platform and people can find that on our website. It's got, detailed kind of proposals, concrete ideas for what we plan to do. And, maybe I would say this being on one side of the divide in this election, but I think that it's a bit less clear exactly what the plan from the other side is. And exactly where it differs, but I think what I think we can discern so far is that we're a sort of continuity campaign, if you like. The Forward Momentum campaign won last time and has been running the organisation for the last couple of years, and that was in large part about democratising Momentum. It had been a very top-down, bureaucratic, undemocratic organisation for a really long time. And the Forward Momentum slate last time was committed to democratising the organisation. And that's something that we're really committed to as well, maintaining those changes and keeping that democratic way of organising and engaging our members going. I think that's a point of difference. Certainly the other side has said, has been slightly critical or disparaging of some of those democratic changes, or said they were a distraction, that kind of thing. We don't think democracy is a distraction. We think it's actually how we organise and how we engage our members. And I think if you look at Momentum's history between I think 2017 and 2019, there was a drop of about 10 to 15,000 members or something like that, maybe, in a period where it wasn't responsive to members, it wasn't democratic. So we think that's a really important thing for engaging people, giving them a stake, giving them a reason to get involved. Not the only reason, but that's an important part of it. And I guess that would be one dividing line. I think the other one that's seeming to emerge is about kind of what the focus of our organising is. I think my interpretation would be that the other slate are keen for a kind of more narrowly focused internal Labour organising, kind of mobilising around battles within the Labour Party, maybe instead of anything else. I think, for us, obviously we are a Labour-oriented organisation, right? We're Labour members, we're representatives of a representative organisation of people on the left of Labour. So, for us, it's a given that we're going to organise in Labour, and that those battles are really important, and we're going to, that's going to be the main kind of focus of what we're doing. But we also think that there are important battles outside Labour, that that power isn't just exercised through political parties. It's exercised in industrial struggles and through our trade unions and in the streets and in community campaigns and all those sorts of things. So we think that obviously Labour is extremely important, and we're going to be putting lots of effort into organising around the fights within Labour, but also that Momentum has a role to support struggles in trade unions and to, where it can, help to build the wider socialist movement through the kind of the resources and assets that Momentum can kind of offer within that kind of broader socialist ecology in the UK.
So there's loads of stuff I want to pick up there around the kind of trade union movement and kind of wider social movements and the kind of broader left. But just wanted to stick on the kind of internal Labour Party question for a moment, if that's okay. So I think it's fair to say that at the moment, the left in the Labour Party is in a significantly weaker position than it was, say, 2.5 years ago. Since Keir Starmer was elected as Labour leader, you've seen, the obvious kind of symbol of this is that, Jeremy Corbyn is not currently a member of the PLP, having been removed, the former leader of the Labour Party. You've also obviously got significant numbers of left-wing Labour members who came through Momentum or came through the Corbyn project, having either been purged from the party or leaving the party of their own accord. And the position of the left is significantly weakened. Now, some people would say that, as you've kind of painted this picture of earlier of Momentum being this really important organisation for the left and for socialism in the UK, in the Labour Party, some would say that over the last 2.5 years, essentially Momentum has failed to maintain the left's position within the Labour Party. Now, you mentioned there that your Momentum is a kind of continuity ticket of the forward Momentum team that has been running Momentum for the last 2 years. So how would you respond to those who would say, the Labour Party, the left and the Labour Party is significantly diminished. You've been running Momentum for the last 2 years as kind of one of the organisations that's key to the strengths of the left. Why should people be putting their faith in you again to run that organisation?
Yeah, I think that obviously, conditions have become really, really difficult in the Labour Party, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. I think it would be a mistake and not very useful analysis and not very fair to kind of pin that on Momentum and what Momentum's done over the last 2 years. I think we have to be kind of realistic about this, right? So if you think about the Labour Party, there were 3 main sites of formal or bureaucratic power, if you like, in the Labour Party. One of them is the leader's office, another one's the NEC, and another one is the Parliamentary Labour Party. Now, we never had a majority control of the Parliamentary Labour Party, even at the height of the Corbyn years, and so that's not changed. We obviously had the leader's office, and that was a huge asset, and it had knock-on effects everywhere else. Apart from anything else, it drew people into the party. It kept people in the party, people who were going to then vote for things and support things that we would want to be supported. So we've lost that. that happened, prior to this NCG coming in, and it was obviously not the fault of the people who've been running Momentum for the last 2 years. And then you've got the NEC, right, which is, more or less a kind of ultimate bureaucratic decision-making body in the party, has pretty much limitless power almost, to kind of make whatever decisions it likes. And the majority on that, on the NEC, even at the height of the Corbyn years, we barely had a majority on the NEC. I think we had a slim one for a short period of time, and then subsequently that's been lost due to various factors, partly through the loss of seats in the members section of the CLP votes. Partly now we've had that's been compounded because they've changed the voting system, so it's harder for the left to win lots of seats in the CLP section on the NEC. With a new leader, they get lots of seats on the NEC that they can put in, shadow benches, shadow cabinet people in, then, and things like that. So I think that's the reality of the situation in the party, is that there have been those changes, which are no fault of the people running Momentum, and they create a really difficult situation, and that's not something that is particularly easy to overcome, because we don't have access to those kind of bureaucratic levers of power. So I think anyone who's saying that that's a failure of the current NCG, and this is why things are so difficult in the party, and that's why people are being kind of purged with impunity and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I think that's just not a realistic assessment of what's happened and why it's happened, and also where we are and what we need to do. I think on the other side, that's the only kind of power that you can exercise, right? So you can exercise power, through organising Labour members and things like that. You could, through votes at conference. Unfortunately, we've seen that those can be quite easily ignored, and that actually goes, for policy motions that get passed, but also rule changes as well. And I think there is a strategic difference between the two. But there was a rule change passed at last conference, which was around giving local CLPs more say over selections, where there was a short time period, if it's a snap election or a by-election or something like that. That's been ignored. That was ignored in Wakefield. The party's own rules. I think it should be a panel of 5 with 3 CLP members, and it was a panel of 5 with 1 CLP member. So, even the rules of the party can be ignored, if the right has hold of all of those levers. And that's very, very difficult. But, I would say also within that context, there has been effective organising where possible. There have been votes won at conference. A majority of CLP member votes or delegates in the CLP section won at conference. There's been national committees, the Women's Committee, a majority in the Women's Committee, majority on Young Labour National Committee. A majority of votes in the CLP section in the elections for the NEC last time round, although under STV that doesn't necessarily translate into so many seats. So I think we've got to have a balanced perspective about what's happened. Realistically, we've got a very difficult situation where our levers for changing things in the party are quite limited. And within that context, I think there's still been some very effective organising from the Momentum NCG over the last couple of years. But the constraints that are placed on that by the other factors mean that doesn't necessarily translate into decisive gains within the party.
So I guess in light of that, in light of the the fact that the picture you just painted of the right of the Labour Party controlling the various different wings of the bureaucracy, and from an outsider's perspective, it looks like the upcoming NEC elections are going in that trajectory as well. In terms of from as I understand it, the CLP nominations for Labour to win candidates and the kind of other right factions appear to be racking up quite quickly. In light of the context where the right is controlling all the different kind of bits of the infrastructure and the bureaucracy, where, as you've kind of described, conference votes are ignored and rule changes are ignored. What does Momentum strategy within the Labour Party look like over the next 2 years to start to shift the party to the left?
Well, I think, the starting point for us is that, there are no quick fixes. And actually, anyone who's kind of, suggesting that they can come in and, put together, this, really decisive plan that's going to, suddenly turn things around is kidding themselves, really. I think what the only option we have, really, I think, is patient organizing, which empowers and engages members and builds capacity within Momentum, and hopefully within the broader movement as well. So I think for us, I think there's a few things. I mean, we've got I think if we maybe if we take just a step back as well, if we look at where Momentum had when the last NCG took over. I mean, in the years before that, I think there was a lot of disillusionment with the kind of top-down anti-democratic approach, and lots of groups had kind of withered away. Lots of members have become disengaged. So we're, I think, still in a process of trying to turn that around, trying to engage more of our members, trying to get more groups set up, and to get people active. So I think that's part of the part of what we need to be doing is around that kind of thing, and trying to get turn our members from being paper members who maybe just receive our emails into people who are active and doing things within their local area and within the Labour Party and affecting things in that way. And then I think we've got to think about where we can shift things elsewhere. So we've got to think about part of the power in the Labour Party is obviously through the unions, and we need to look at where we can get Momentum members active in unions, use our national organisation to support existing trade union lefts, and we've been doing that really effectively, I think, with Unison recently. And so to try to over time shift the balance of forces in the unions as well, which will then have a knock-on effect within the party. So I think that those are the sorts of things that we need to be doing, and there's, I guess, a kind of range of ways that we can kind of approach that.
So that kind of perfectly leads me on to what I wanted to talk about next, which is trade unions. So we're living in a time at the moment where over the last few months we've seen a massive upsurge in the militancy of trade unionism in the UK. I think the kind of the obvious ones to talk about in relation to this is the over the last few months you've seen Unite under Sharon Graham as General Secretary, really winning huge pay and conditions victories for workers across the country, sometimes upwards of 25-28% pay deals for workers. And of course, right now as we're talking, the RMT dispute is ongoing. For anyone watching, make sure you do get down to an RMT picket line, show your support and solidarity. Not only will it be a really important thing for you to support the RMT and show your support, but also it's a brilliant experience. It's really important political education and lots of fun. So get down to your RMT picket line. But in that context of the RMT dispute, which is ongoing, and that being the biggest national rail strike for over 30 years. You've got ballots taking place within the TSSA, within the NEU, the civil service as well, and a whole bunch of other sectors. In that context of that increased militancy within the trade union movement, how do you think Momentum should be relating to that? And I guess thinking about how you can translate that kind of militancy at an individual union level into kind of wider political change and political power.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we need to be doing is getting members of Momentum active in trade unions. And I think, if we think about the context, we had lots of people flooding into the Labour Party, maybe not politically active previously. Lots of those ended up in Momentum, and lots of them are still there, but they didn't necessarily have a background in being trade union members or active in their trade unions. So I think we need to support our members to take that up, to become trade union members if they're not already, to become active trade union members if they're not already. So we've got, part of our proposals is to expand and build on the trade union network that's been set up recently by Momentum in order to facilitate that work. And then, we've got a role that we can play with linking up those people with people on the existing left of those trade unions, getting people kind of mentored and networked with those people so they can feed in and support those struggles. And we can provide kind of, some resources and things around that, and networking and contacts and all that sort of stuff in order to support that. And then, that really is how we can start to bolster that left in the trade union movement. I think there's, where there's struggles going on, obviously we can also encourage our members to support that. I mean, as you just have, get down to the picket lines. We can use our social media reach to signal boost, that sort of stuff. We can use our mailing list. We can do all of that kind of stuff as well. But then when, where we can build those relationships and support for existing trade union lefts, I think that can be a really effective strategy for shifting things in the longer term. And I think we have seen that in the support that we've been giving to the organised left in Unison, the Time for Real Change movement, providing infrastructure and organising advice, helping to identify possible candidates, promoting slates, and that's been really effective. There's been the left in Unison have been on a march, taking positions on the executive. Actually, one of our candidates standing on our slate, Amrit, has just been elected, was it either last week or earlier this week, as vice president of Unison. And so this is really significant stuff. Unison is, they have 25% of the block vote in the affiliate section at Labour conference. They're a big, important union that can exert pressure on the Labour Party. So these are the sorts of strategies, I think, when it comes to trade unions, that can really shift the balance of forces over time. But it will take time, and it's not something we can kind of flip a switch and make everything happen overnight. I think what we have done, what we've seen already, is that the people involved in this campaign have got a track record of doing this and an understanding of how it can be done effectively, and that's what we want to take forward over the next couple of years.
So one reflection I've had over the kind of last few months is it's been an interesting time, not only because of that militancy in the trade union movement that we've spoken about, but also because, I guess, of the drifting away of the trade union movement from the Labour Party, in that you had the BFAWU disaffiliate from Labour last year. Unite remains affiliated to Labour, but has at various points threatened to cut its funding. Obviously, the RMT is not affiliated to the Labour Party, and Mick Lynch has made very clear that he doesn't care whether the Labour Party formally supports the strikes. Now, I think in the current context of the RMT strike, which is obviously getting huge amounts of national media coverage, what you've got is a trade union standing up for its members' pay, conditions, and jobs. And you have a Labour a Labour leader and the Whip's office threatening Labour front benchers with disciplinary action if they show support for the RMT and join picket lines. Now, for your kind of political approach and political strategy, which is, Momentum is a Labour-linked organisation, do you not see there being like a big challenge at the moment for organising within trade unions and with trade unionists, in that there's this upsurge in trade union militancy? You've got this situation where over the last 48 hours people have been Googling join a union at a rate like never before. It looks like the massive growth in NEU membership that we saw during the pandemic is going to be replicated in other trade unions as well. Do you think there's a real challenge there, in that there's going to be lots and lots of people joining trade unions that are willing to stand up and fight for their members, and they see the Labour Party and they see it either trying to sit on the fence or actively undermining trade unions? How does that kind of relate to your strategy as Momentum, as an organizer that's wedded to the Labour Party?
Yeah, well, and I think actually that's where I think Momentum has a really important role to play. because that leadership isn't coming from within the Parliamentary Labour Party, it's not coming from the leader of the Labour Party. I mean, some notable exceptions in the Parliamentary Labour Party. I mean, certainly there have been, the usual reliable people, and maybe a few others, actually speaking up and turning out on the picket lines. So we've got, we've got that, but excuse me, beyond that, there's, that leadership isn't coming from within the Labour Party. And so we have a really important role, I think, to play in Momentum to provide that leadership ourselves, to unequivocally back trade union struggles, to encourage people to get involved with them. And that's, that's partly about just supporting those struggles, but also that's about, we've obviously seen a huge loss of members from the Labour Party, 150,000 members. There'll be, mostly left members who we want in the Labour Party to affect things. And it's no wonder, because they're looking at this leadership and they're seeing, the way it's acting, and they're thinking this isn't a party for me, and I'm not sticking around. But that's where I think, Momentum can take a lead and show that actually that's not the only kind of show in town when it comes to the Labour Party, right? There are socialists in the Labour Party. We are organised. We do support these struggles, and actually, we have a space where, if you think the same, you can organise with us, and together we can try to shift things within the Labour Party. So that's where I think, it's almost an opportunity for us that Starmer's been quite so bad on the unions, because actually, it's our role to do that, and I think we have to show people that you don't. Being in the Labour Party doesn't mean that it's not tacitly accepting everything that the leadership does, right? The Labour Party is a terrain of struggle, and that's, we're in it because we want to shift its direction and influence things, and that's the whole point of what we're trying to do. So by providing that voice, hopefully people can see that actually that's a way that they can do it as well. And we want those people to stay in the party, and I think it would be a complete disaster if all of those people who flooded into activity and into that space kind of dissipated and drifted off.
Another area that's kind of mentioned in your platform, I think you talked about it briefly earlier, is the relationship between Momentum and sort of wider campaign groups and social movements. What are the kind of key social movements that you think that Momentum ought to be supporting and organising within at the moment?
Well, I think there's probably two levels to it, really. So, I mean, I think there's the sort of local level and there's the national level. I think at the local level, it's important to allow autonomy for groups and activists on the ground to kind of identify what's important in their local area and support that. I mean, if I just think about my local area, we have a local climate alliance which brings together various different groups, and we've got a seat on that, and we attend those meetings, and we're part of those conversations and things like that. We've got other local campaigns that are ongoing that we support, and we're thinking about launching a campaign of our own around buses. We had a lot of cuts to bus services recently, so we think that that's a local condition where there's something to be active around. And those things will be different in different places, and I think that's important. And those, I think those campaigns are really important for local groups because, they raise visibility, they raise credibility, they give those members who maybe aren't turning up to meetings because they're not very motivated to do that something more interesting and concrete to actually come out and do. So I think they have a really important role to play. Obviously they're good in themselves, but they have an important role to play in terms of engaging people, organising people, getting people active. I think at a national level, we are our plan within our platform is to work with other groups across the Labour left and beyond to try to cohere a campaign around the cost of living crisis. I think that is, that's the number one issue that's that's really facing us at the moment that I think we need to organise around. So that's about organising with the Socialist Campaign Group and other groups within the Labour Party and outside as well, to try to contribute to not run on our own, but contribute to and hopefully kind of cohere a campaign around that. And then I think, I mean, you know, there may be other areas where we want to do some work. I mean, we've done, you know, we've been rolling out political education. I think it's really important for us to, you know, to provide that sort of stuff for our members, so they can be big advocates for our politics in all the spaces that they're operating in. And so, you know, and then, you know, some of that's been around issues of racial justice and things like that. So I think that stuff, you know, it's important that we still look at opportunities to do that kind of thing. But I think the big focus in terms of maybe a national campaign is likely to be cost of living in the near future.
Now, you used a phrase there, which was the Labour left and beyond, and a significant portion of Bright Green's audience is people who are either members or supporters of the Green Party, or people who have moved between sort of the Labour left and the Greens at various points over the last few years. What do you think the relationship between the Labour left and Greens should be?
So I think that it's a really important and interesting question, because, as you say, there's a big group of people who are kind of, they're in that space, which is Labour left, Green. Maybe they've been in one, maybe they've been in the other. You know, so there's obviously kind of, you know, I think that tells us that there's people out there who they have a kind of political orientation, and they're sort of searching about for the right way to express that and pursue that, and what kind of organising possibilities there are that are best going to enable them to do that. So I think, you know, the lesson there is that there's obviously shared politics there. There's obviously shared objectives, and I think that you know, we need to look for ways that we can you know, we can combine forces around, you know, those sorts of shared aims. So that might be kind of, you know, single issue campaigns and that kind of thing. I mean, if I, again, just to take a kind of example from my own local context, you know, the local climate alliance group that that we attend was set up by a local Green Party member, and it's, you know, it's looking at various ways that we can intervene locally around those sorts of issues. So it is already an alliance of Green Party, Labour left, Momentum members. So I think we've got to be open to those possibilities. We've got to be proactive about building those relationships and talking to each other, and trying to identify where there are areas we can work together, and then pursuing those kind of joint campaigns where possible, basically.
Okay, I've just got a couple more questions for you before I let you go. So the first one is, we talked about a range of things that are in your Momentum's platform for these NCG elections. Now, scrolling through the Your Momentum website, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of commitments in there. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but there are a lot of commitments on Your Momentum's website for these NCG elections. Now, a criticism of that might be that the kind of scale of the pledges that you're making as a slate possibly don't recognise or have an unrealistic assessment of Momentum's available resources and, you know, ability to deliver in the current context, and would question that as a strategy of having, you know, this very broad approach to organising. What would you say to that?
I mean, I think obviously, you know, Momentum has limited resources, and it's going to be really important over the next 2 years to direct those as effectively as possible. But I think that we've got, you know, I think our plan is realistic in terms of what we can do around that. I think that a lot of the objectives that we've got within there are mutually reinforcing. You know, they're things where, you know, activity in one area actually contributes to activity in another area. I think that, you know, if you, I mean, what we you know, hope to do is activate more of our members to be taking on tasks and organising in their local areas. And I think our role needs to be as a kind of facilitator to allow that to happen, to think about where we can provide infrastructure and resources to support that. But obviously, you know, we don't expect you know, our staff or anything like that to be able to kind of do all of that stuff at the same time. I think as well, like, you know, some of these things are I mean, when it comes to, you know, Labour Party organising, there are kind of pinch points across the calendar year where we need to direct resources to particular things and not others. So I think, you know, it's about thinking about what the pressing issues are at different points and directing them like appropriately to meet those needs.
And my final question for you, it's a slightly cheeky one, a slightly silly one, but if you had it your way, who would the next leader of the Labour Party be?
That is a good question. Well, listen, I think my first choice would probably be Zara Sultana, I think. I mean, she's obviously committed socialist. She is, an awesome advocate for socialist politics. She's not shy about fighting for the politics that we believe in. And she's been hugely impressive since she's been in Parliament. So I think that would be my first choice.
A glowing assessment for Zara there. Thank you so much, Lorcan, for joining me this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And for those watching who are members of Momentum, where can people find out more about your platform?
So you can find out about our platform at www.yourmomentum.org. There you'll find, our proposals. We've got as you say, a set of concrete proposals for what we want to do over the next 2 years. You can sign up to our mailing list, and we really want people to sign up to our mailing list so that we can stay in touch with them. That would be fantastic. And obviously you can follow us on Twitter. We're at YourMMTM, or Your Momentum is our Twitter page name. And on Facebook as well, we're at Your Momentum. So yeah, you can follow the campaign those ways, but we're really keen for people to sign up to our website so we can be in touch with you and give you all of the important news as the campaign develops.
Yeah, thank you so much. So voting in the NCG elections opens on June 28th, and I believe it's open for about 2.5 weeks-ish, with results in sort of mid-July. Hopefully it. Oh, sorry,
sorry to interrupt, Chris. I'll just say, okay, it's voting actually closes 6th of July. So
6th of July.
Yeah. So don't leave it too long before filling in your ballot.
Yeah. Don't listen to me or you'll miss the deadline, is what we've learned there. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have Lorcan joining me this evening. We will hopefully be interviewing one of the candidates from the Momentum Organisers slates. If any of you from that slate are watching right now, please do get in touch and we'll get an interview booked in before the 6th of July when voting closes. Before we head off, I just have a final few bits and pieces to say. Firstly, I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again now. Please do scroll down right now and hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a penny. It means that you won't miss any of the videos that Bright Green is putting out in the coming days and months, including hopefully that interview with the Momentum Organiser slate. Now, we have tons of articles on our website, bright-green.org, including some news pieces on the Momentum NCG elections, comment pieces from candidates and their supporters. So please do check that out. That's bright-green.org. And if you've enjoyed this interview, let us know in the comments down below. But also, because Bright Green isn't funded by billionaires or big businesses, we need the support of regular, ordinary people like you. So if you are able to, please do head to bright-green.org/donate and set up a regular donation to help us to produce more interviews like this one. That's it from me. So thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you very, very soon.